we'll be talking about how AI is shaping IT infrastructure purchasing trends in 2024. So what will we talk about today? Much of this discussion will be based on TBR's infrastructure strategy customer research. So this is an online survey that we field every year that focuses on buyers of IT infrastructure. So we'll talk a little bit about what that study is, and then jump right into some of our topical findings. So specifically some trends around AI and how that's shifted mindsets compared to what we've seen in previous year studies. And then we'll hit on some other kind of emerging and topical trends that have been hot topics for 2024. So here are your presenters, myself, Angela Lambert, and Ben Carbonneau. We both team together on TBR's IT infrastructure and devices research, as well as Ben also focuses on the semiconductor space as well. So a quick bit about our infrastructure strategy customer research. This online survey is fielded every spring, so this year between April and May. We target IT decision makers in the United States, a fairly broad representation of company sizes. So at the very smallest, surveys with companies with at least 250 employees, all the way up to very large enterprises. We look at many industry verticals. We cover manufacturing, healthcare, retail, government, and more as part of this study, and target 300 respondents. So again, that focuses on US IT purchasers who have a specific focus on purchasing infrastructure, IT infrastructure for their organization. The study looks at macro trends. So those would be things like sentiment around AI, sentiment around kind of economic events or changes in kind of the globe. We also look at tracking some specific elements from year to year. So how are IT infrastructure investments changing in things like server, storage, hyper-converged infrastructure? What are companies thinking about data center consolidation versus expansion of their IT footprints? And what are some of the infrastructure services that they're prioritizing? So with that background in mind on the types of companies that we survey for this research, let's jump in and take a look at some of our findings specific to AI and Gen AI. So first things first, how is kind of the overall market buzz around AI impacting company decision making at kind of the topmost levels? So one of the first things that we found in looking at this study is that organizational priorities shifted very suddenly in 2024 compared to their rather consistent state over the last 2 years. We survey respondents on about a dozen or so priorities that they kind of rank in terms of what is most important to their organization. And in 2022 and 2023, we did not see any kind of broad project transformation priorities coming up into the top of the list. Improving security and improving the reliability of IT systems were consistently the most important priorities to IT organizations and looking at their roadmap. So very operationally focused and focused on the core of what IT does. 2024, we were surprised to see that, we expected an increased importance in artificial intelligence. It rose to be the #1 organizational priority for all of our survey respondents. So this is, to me, really just showing a sea change in mindsets in the degree to which management across companies of all sizes and industry verticals have set that expectation that they know they need to be thinking about AI and need to, plot their course to get ahead strategically. So I think this to us told us resoundingly that AI is on the mind of companies of all sizes and all types of different industries. So with that, we know AI is on everyone's mind. Where are they in adoption? So looking here at organizations' positions on adopting Gen AI specifically, we see that most respondents at this point are still weighing their path forward. 22% have reported that they are using Gen AI technologies in day-to-day operations. We see many more still in an evaluation stage, whether that's potentially testing some technologies or internally discussing potential use cases that could benefit the organization. I would point out also that there's kind of a smaller subset of companies and respondents here that are interested in waiting for more turnkey Gen AI solutions. So that 18% are not necessarily looking to blaze their own trail, but they want to benefit from the innovations of their technology providers, and are interested in seeing what is brought to market that they can then potentially easily adopt and use in their organizations. So how do respondents expect to deploy Gen AI technologies? Right now, it's looking like customers are certainly anticipating a hybrid approach. We see on the left-hand side of your screen here, 65% of our respondents expect to deploy Gen AI on their own private infrastructure, 45% looking at using public cloud. So certainly overlap between those two groups where there's going to be both private infrastructure and public cloud usage that are going to be contributing to the Gen AI strategy. And again, speaking to the group we saw on the last slide who are looking to leverage more turnkey solutions, 59% saying they want to buy software that has Gen AI features embedded within. So they want to be able to take advantage of these capabilities without necessarily having to do a lot of the heavy lifting themselves. So certainly a hybrid strategy here. The buyers that we're surveying expect that they're going to see a mix of investing in their own infrastructure and using cloud infrastructure. I will also remind you that these survey respondents are responsible for buying IT infrastructure, so they may be somewhat biased towards that model, just given their own responsibilities within our organizations. But again, we're still anticipating a very, very hybrid model here. And I think the other thing that we wanted to point out around how this has shifted the mindsets of our buyers that we have surveyed over the past 3 years. We had previously seen some fairly consistent trends in how IT infrastructure buyers are thinking about their own hardware footprint expansion. So the actual servers, the storage, the HCI, HPC networking that they're buying and deploying in their own data centers or in a co-location environment. In 2022 and 2023, we very consistently saw that storage was the type of infrastructure that respondents were most likely to anticipate purchasing and adding to their own IT footprint. Servers were actually the least popular and more of a target for public cloud migration, and customers more so saw their server base as an opportunity for moving general compute elsewhere. Interestingly, in 2024, as we saw more respondents talking about heightened interest in AI, their interest in investing in hardware has also shifted, where we saw servers being the top type of hardware customers anticipate expanding in their own IT footprints. So whether, again, that's in their own data center or in colocation. That was actually the top type of hardware in 2024 that was identified as an expansion versus consolidation of those footprints. So not only are these companies, thinking about investing in Gen AI, they're already kind of thinking we need to expand our server compute capability. And over time, I think we certainly may see that the storage becomes a priority again. But it's certainly kind of an interesting change and indicative of what customers are thinking they're going to need. Ben, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to share on this slide?
Yeah, just if we look over kind of on that left side chart there, I think one thing that I've really heard from a lot of the server OEMs across this industry is really them touting their inferencing capabilities of their traditional servers. So think about servers that are, not what we would call GPU servers or what we would consider AI optimized servers. I think as we see Gen AI workload mix kind of shift a little away from training and more heavily toward inference, I think maybe we see that 65% number increase maybe in next year's survey. That's just something to watch out for and something that I found a little bit interesting.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, so next thing I want to touch on with our AI adoption trends would be the barriers we're seeing customers facing, and then we'll turn it over to Ben for some of the other kind of key trends from our online survey this year. We broke out the adoption barriers by company size in this visual today because we thought as we analyzed this data that some of the barriers we're seeing here are reflective of potentially where different size companies are in their overall adoption and what unique challenges they may potentially face. When we're talking about small businesses here, 250 to 999 employees, the mid-sized businesses are 1,000 to 5,000. And the enterprise category would be anything larger than that. So looking across the barriers we see here, I think the enterprise respondents, in our own experience engaging with customers, vendors, solution providers in the channel, enterprises are certainly far more likely to be ahead or have more mature thinking about their AI strategy. I think that's reflected in some of the barriers here around assessing legal and ethical risks to using their Gen AI technology, identifying the use cases with solid ROI, but in particular, enterprises were the only group to cite structuring their data from machine learning as a current barrier to adopting Gen AI. So for us, that's reflective of maybe some of these organizations being farther along in that testing or deploying category, whereas in the other categories, in medium business in particular, we see potential concerns around how am I even going to get started here? So challenges like finding vendors to help us deploy Gen AI solutions and the lack of internal skills to operate Gen AI technology. So an appetite to invest potentially, but also gaps in terms of how they're going to pull this off. On the small business side, with cost of adopting new technologies and also identifying use cases with ROI, I think we see more of the potential challenge of price coming into play here, and also maybe greater interest in more of the turnkey or software with AI enhancements versus developing bespoke and individual AI solutions. So that's where I'm going to wrap up on AI for now. I see there's questions coming into the Q&A, but feel free to continue adding questions there. And Ben, I'll turn it over to you to cover a couple of our other trends.
Great. Yeah, so thanks, Angela. Obviously, really, Gen AI was a big focus of our survey this year, but I think some other interesting, I think we're clicking the slide at the same time. Another interesting finding that we have is around the VMware licensing changes. So for those of you who are unaware, I'll give a little bit of background, but Broadcom acquired VMware in November of 2023. And with their acquisition, they acquired 300,000 customers from VMware. And then just a month later, we heard Broadcom-VMware announced that it would no longer be selling perpetual licenses. And we know that just from commentary from Broadcom during the company's December earnings call, that around 60% of its VMware licenses were actually perpetual. So these are licenses that the company is now trying to move to subscription licenses. I think it's also worth noting that even perpetual license holders did have support in subscription or SNS contracts with VMware, and those are typically renewed on an annual basis. So when these contracts end, customers will have a few options. So they'll either shift workloads off of VMware, they'll upgrade to their subscription licenses and support. And right now, we see Broadcom offering some trade-in incentives to perpetual license holders moving to subscription, making that transition a little bit easier for some of them. Or third, they can continue leveraging their perpetual license and then opt to purchase third-party VMware support. So something new that we're seeing from vendors such as Rimini Street and Origina is that they're offering this third-party VMware support specifically for these customers on perpetual licenses so that they can continue using their perpetual license for a longer period of time. And to support this decision that these organizations are faced with VMware workloads, we're seeing infrastructure OEMs as well as service providers offering advisory, virtualization advisory services, as well as migration services. So kind of moving on to our findings from the survey, we heard 74% of our respondents expect to move their VMware workloads to an alternative platform, but importantly, 42% of those respondents will also continue to use VMware. So it'll really be kind of a hybrid approach, and that's where those advisory services come in, really understanding what workloads are critical and need to stay on VMware, and then what workloads can be migrated to potentially another virtualization source that is more cost effective. Second finding that we had was 46% of respondents indicate that they'll continue to use VMware. That kind of echoes that last finding that I spoke about. And lastly, just only 15% of the survey sample are fully committed to VMware and are not planning some level of migration. So I also found that interesting, and I think these are mostly going to be those really large organizations that have the capital to be able to continue to stay with VMware on that subscription basis. And additionally, aside from its changes to its licensing model, we also saw VMware really consolidating the number of offerings that it's using. I think they announced that they're divesting some end user technology business to focus a lot more on private and hybrid cloud. And we're seeing the company really focus on upselling vSphere compute virtualization customers on VMware Cloud Foundation, which is the company's full stack offering. However, it is worth noting that, again, really it's only those larger enterprises that are going to be able to afford that transition, and the company is still offering vSphere to its smaller commercial customers. But really a push to increase VMware's revenue. And also, interestingly, it's something that Broadcom has done in the past. When it acquired CA, the company also transitioned a lot of that company's perpetual licenses to subscriptions. Let me move on to another adjacent finding here, aside from Gen AI, and that was on sustainability. I think interestingly, this survey was based in the U.S. Really, we see demand for sustainability services, I think mostly coming from Europe due to regulatory reasons. However, this year, compared to the last 2 years, we're seeing respondents increasingly citing sustainability and energy consumption as pain points that they need to be addressed. We're seeing potential sustainability features being added to server and storage portfolios, with respondents first and foremost valuing asset recycling. And I really think that is for a few reasons, right? So Asset recycling, not only does it remove customers' unwanted hardware and contributes to their sustainability goals, but also typically will provide credits toward new hardware purchases. So the customer's actually, saving some money there. I think maybe as more regulations get implemented, we'll see more uptake of other sustainability services in the U.S. But for right now, it's really focused on value asset recycling. For findings supporting that, we heard 44% of respondents rated asset recycling as a top 1 or 2 most valuable server and storage sustainability feature. The last thing on sustainability that I would add is that we're seeing vendors add management console features that monitor electricity consumption and emissions. For example, we saw HPE leveraging IT Ops and AI Ops capabilities to strengthen its Ops Ramp IT asset management service offering. Well, Ops Ramp is really known for allowing customers to monitor the performance of their IT assets, primarily from a workload efficiency perspective. It's worth noting that Ops Ramp also feeds telemetry data to HPE's Sustainability Insights Center, which is, I guess, differentiated a little bit from what other infrastructure OEMs are offering, in the sense that not only does it track telemetry data from HPE assets that the customer has, but also will track telemetry data from other vendors' assets in the estate. So we'll see HPE continue to leverage those capabilities to drive organizations' infrastructure modernization, ideally, with a push toward, implementing more HPE infrastructure. I think also worth noting is HPE is one of those companies that has really been vocal in offering some of these virtualization advisory and migration services. And I think that's something we'll see more and more customers take advantage of. I'd also note that IBM recently made some new sustainability services announcements associated with its IT asset management and its technology lifecycle services for sustainability. And I think we'll see the company continue to leverage that to sell its asset recovery and disposition services, which is similar to those value asset recycling services I was talking about earlier. With that, I'd invite Angela to add anything on either of those subjects. Otherwise, we can open it up to the question and answer.
No, I think those were well covered. So I see we've got questions in the chat here and a few minutes left. So let's jump in. Maybe, Ben, I see a VMware question at the top here. So since we were just chatting about that, maybe that's a good place to start. So for VMware migration, do you have any thoughts on if existing customers will be moving to Red Hat offerings like OpenShift virtualization?
I do see customers going to move in that direction. However, do you have any percentage of such customers? I don't have those numbers available. I think that's something that we'll hear a little bit more maybe from IBM later in the year, but that's nothing that I've heard anything about thus far. However, I do know that it's something that is happening.
I would add to that, I think, in some of our recent discussions with solution providers who work with multiple brands, that we've heard feedback around interest in Azure Stack, HCI. We've heard some interest in Nutanix. I would say, I think Red Hat is certainly going to be in the mix. For our larger customers, the feedback we've gotten is that many of them are interested in testing a couple of different potential solutions before they're going to be making a decision. So not necessarily a quick decision for some of these customers. They're going to be taking their time before they make any major shifts. Okay, let's see. So for medium businesses looking for vendors to help with AI, do we have insight into what they're seeking around consulting, infrastructure, data analytics, et cetera? Do they seek help from OEMs like HPE or ISVs, for example? I can tackle that one, Ben, and maybe you have some thoughts as well. At this stage, what I think we've seen a fair amount of is, the services kind of being broken into 2 phases. First being kind of an assessment and consulting type phase. I think customers may potentially engage in with OEMs, excuse me, in the mid-market, particularly if they are, too small to be engaging with, the Accentures of the world. There's a fair chance that they may be engaging with their OEMs. Many customers are focusing on some of the server elements as a priority of developing their solutions. And we've certainly seen many of the OEMs announcing, services around this topic area. So I do think that there is some initial traction in terms of the staged approach with companies that are doing a consulting evaluation stage. Frankly, because we've gotten so much feedback that customers truly have no idea where to start. So that's kind of an essential first step for a lot of customers. Ben, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I guess the only thing that I would add is we're seeing a lot of these infrastructure OEMs really try to develop a lot of turnkey AI solutions. We're seeing that through what Lenovo is doing with its AI Innovators program, which is really similar to what we're seeing Dell doing with AI Factory and AI Factory with NVIDIA. So I think, kind of being able to steer customers in the direction of one of these turnkey solutions that has already been validated by the company is really a good way to engage with those customers and kind of lock down them as an AI infrastructure customer.
Excellent. Okay, so there's also a question on whether our survey captured any federal agencies or bureaus and where they would be represented in the data. So I actually know this answer because it's not the first time we have been asked on this specific data. So we do have a public sector cut. However, the most of the respondents in the 2024 survey were in more of state and local governments and public education. So I don't have a significant sample of federal agencies that I can pull out of this survey data, unfortunately. Okay, and then another survey question, and I'll pop back to the slide just so we can make sure we're looking at the same thing here. So on how organizations will deploy Gen AI use cases, how was this question asked? So this is a multi-select question, and you can see, these add up to well over 100%. So respondents can be doing any combination of these things, and we very much expect them to for different use cases. So respondents can be using their own infrastructure, public cloud, as well as using different software solutions that have enhanced features.